Poison ivy is normally not hard to identify with its distinctive trifoliate leaves, but what about in the winter when many people insist it is still very much potent? Here I will teach you just how to identify this plant in the winter. Now before I jump to the main part of this video, I want to disclose first that I'll mostly be discussing western poison ivy, also known as Toxicodendron rydbergii, which despite its name can also be found in some of the eastern states like in New England, the upper Midwest, and onto the Great Plains, and which you can see a few specimens of right down there, as opposed to eastern poison ivy, also known as Toxicodendron radicans. Now, despite there being two different species, they are very similar to each other, are often hard to tell apart, and for all intents and purposes can be treated as the same for this video, with one important exception, which is that eastern poison ivy, in addition to sometimes growing as a shrub or a low ground cover, can also grow as a climbing vine, which western poison ivy cannot. Well, I can't find any of those climbing vines here in the location I am. I will be able to put a picture up for you right now. If you see a vine that looks like these in the eastern United States or in southern Arizona and New Mexico, covered in hair-like inventive roots, it is almost certainly eastern poison ivy and should be treated as such. Otherwise, for the rest of this video, I will be treating the two species as though they are the same. Now, if out of the way, we can move on to the most important feature for identifying poison ivy in the winter, which is its berries. Poison ivy is known for having white berries that can persist throughout the winter, although as the season drags on, they will start to slowly fall off or get eaten by birds. That being said, there are quite a few plants that can have persistent white berries in the winter, so how do you tell poison ivy apart? Let's take a closer look. First, you notice the size of these berries. They're quite small, not more than a 1/4 of an inch or 7 millimeters in diameter. Another thing you can notice is that they have these little creases on them that run from the base of the berry to the tip. They're a little hard to see, but it's a pretty important feature for identifying the plant. And I think it's kind of cool, almost makes them like little white pumpkins to me. Another thing to keep an eye out for is little flecks of black on the berries, as we can see here. This is a really interesting feature and actually relates directly back to the biology of Toxicodendron and the family Anacardiaceae as a whole, because what causes them is when there is damage to the cuticle of the plant, be it on the fruit, the bark, or on the leaves. This is especially common on the leaves in the summer. It exposes the oily, allergenic urushiol sap to the air, which then quickly oxidizes into this resilient black substance we see, which, fun fact, has been used in Japan for centuries to make incredibly durable and long-lasting lacquerware that, if I'm not mistaken, is unmatched even by synthetic lacquers in its strength, but that's a different story. Another thing to be on the lookout for is a color, which, as I said before, although the berries are often white, even snow white, they can often be also this other more yellowish cream or even greenish color. In fact, I think I see this more commonly around here, so don't just be looking for white berries. Make sure you're looking for these other light colors as well. And finally, notice the position of the inflorescence on the stem. It is not terminal, rather it is axillary, which means instead of developing from the terminal buds, like right at the tips of the branches, it developed from axillary buds lower down. Axillary buds originally develop at the base of leaves and shoots and can remain dormant for quite a while before they get the right chemical signals to develop, which, as you can see here, although the berries look like they're growing right at the tips of the branches, the inflorescence is actually found lower down in its attachment point, so keep an eye out for that. Now, as long as berries are present, it should be possible to get a solid identification of the plant in the wintertime. However, as I said before, sometimes the berries just won't be present, or sometimes they'll slowly start to fall off throughout the winter or get eaten by birds. And when the plants don't have any berries, it can be very difficult to identify, and it might not be totally possible. However, with a few features, you can still get very close identification, if not actually land a solid identification. So let's look at a few things that really set the plants apart from others in the winter. As I said before, their growth form is either that of a shrub or low-growing thing if it's not a vine. And you can see that very clearly here. They grow as a very spindly shrub, often a lot of crooks and leaf scars covering them. And when they do branch, they don't often branch, but when they do, the branches hold themselves very close to the main stem. As you can see all around here. That's important because most shrubs will branch out much more widely than that and sort of form a almost solid mass, so these ones are much more almost like broom-like, I like to say. You can notice also the texture of the bark and color is a very pale gray or light brown like this. And when you compare it to the eastern poison ivy, it's very identical except on the main stem when it's climbing, which will of course be covered in those adventive roots that are very bristle-like. And you can finally look at the leaf buds right here, which I'll have to put a picture up for them, but that's sort of what they look like. They are sort of bent over like this, and if you look very closely at them, they'll be covered in these fine, downy white hairs. So yeah, even without berries, you should still hopefully be able to get a fairly good identification of poison ivy in the winter, or at least get pretty close to the right plant. Now, with all this information, you guys should have no problem identifying poison ivy in the winter, especially if it has berries, but even without, you should be able to get pretty close to identification and have a good idea if a plant is likely poison ivy based on its growth form. Though it's not always possible to get poison ivy rash in the winter, you have to really be brushing up against it without the delicate leaves so you get the urushiol sap on you. If you're doing any yard work or tree trimming, yeah, they'll especially put you at a higher risk of getting poison ivy rash, so be a little aware and you should hopefully avoid any unexpected rashes in the winter. This information can also be helpful for identifying the two native species of poison oak, the western poison oak, or Tuscodendron diversilobum, which is found primarily in California where there isn't any poison ivy species, but also up into the Pacific Northwest, as well as the eastern poison oak, or Tuscodendron pubescens. Thanks for watching, guys, and stay safe.